RFK Jr., he's been in the headlines quite a bit with his Make America Healthy Again efforts. We'll talk about that with a longtime friend of AgriTalk, and we will talk about the dietary guidelines out there. And don't forget, we are going College Roadshow into the University of Minnesota.
Live from the 10th 24 of 24 via Farm Journal broadcast, this is AgriTalk. This morning we'll begin with a conversation with Rex Bernardo from the University of Minnesota. Then it's Professor Dr. Kevin Folta from the University of Florida. And later we'll wrap up with Dr. Shalene McNeill from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Directly following the news, Neville Spears from Drovers. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now, say hello to the host of AgriTalk, Chip Lowry.
All right, Davis. Hey, thank you so much.
That was a long one. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little hoarse after that.
I'm looking at this lineup and thinking to myself, we've got Neville Spear, we've got Bernardo, we've got Folta, we've got McNeill, all on one show today. I got to admit, I kind of lit a fuse with a very simple question. Very simple question. I kind of lit a fuse on Kevin yesterday afternoon. I was just kind of testing him out, seeing if he had anything that he would want to add to the conversation about RFK Jr.'s thoughts on Make America Healthy Again. And let's just say that he does. He's got some thoughts on it.
Okay. Well, good. Good. I can't wait to hear him.
Yeah, I can't wait to get him in here either. And then we're going to talk plant breeding, corn breeding specifically, with Dr. Rex Bernardo. That's coming up in the next segment. And then, good grief, this dietary guideline announcement, or I shouldn't say that it's an announcement. I need to figure out exactly what it is. And we've got Dr. Shalene McNeill from National Cattlemen's Beef Association is going to help us do that at the end of the show.
Excellent.
It's chilly out there today, only 46 degrees. It's only going to be about 60, and they say, I don't know if I believe it or not, but they say it's going to rain tonight.
Really? It still does that?
Yeah. Well, it kind of did that earlier this week, barely. I mean, barely. But they say it's going to rain this week, or rain tonight.
Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they're saying rain for us today as well. Huh. How do you like that? I don't know.
We'll wait and see. What do you got in the news, man?
Well, I'm going to start with the weather. Pleasant weather will continue across most of the country through the end of the week, although I would argue a little rain would be pleasant at this point.
Yes.
Well above average temperatures will continue over the central and southern United States. Here in KC, we're headed for a high of 85 degrees today, mid-60s tomorrow. Private exporters reported the... Yeah, 85 today. Man. I don't know if we'll get there. Okay. It's hot. Private exporters reported the following sales activity: 227,600 metric tons of corn for delivery to Japan. That's for the 24-25 marketing year. Also, 165,000 metric tons of corn for delivery to unknown destinations for 24-25. And 198,000 metric tons of soybeans for delivery to unknown destinations during the 24-25 marketing year. I'm missing China here, Chip.
Yeah. Well, are we? Are we missing China there?
Are we?
It could be one of the unknown destinations. We don't know that.
We don't know. All three major stock indices finished with losses yesterday after failing to trade in positive territory at all during yesterday's session. Chip, several European Union member states eager to limit Moscow's revenues have been urging the bloc to impose sweeping levies on ag and fish imports from Russia and Belarus into the EU, on top of the higher duties on grain products set earlier this year. Others have urged caution, asking to assess the impact of any measures on European imports and food prices first.
Yeah, and if Putin is bringing in North Korean troops to engage in the battle in Ukraine, I would guess that there's going to be more and more EU sanctions on Russia going forward.
Yeah. Well, at the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin introduced a new international payments framework aimed at reducing reliance on the U.S. dollar, which he accused of being used as a weapon by Western powers. The proposed system, known as BRICS Bridge, would utilize blockchain tokens and digital currencies as an alternative to the SWIFT system.
Yeah, everybody out there that is for some reason still thinking that BRICS is just kind of a concept, some loosely tossed together thought. It's not. I mean, You guys, this is a real thing. This is an all-out effort led by Russian President Putin to have a kind of, a new world order out there. So pay attention here, guys.
Yeah, they're not fooling around here with this.
No.
And then there's this. At the Bloomberg B20 event in Sao Paulo, U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai urged Brazil to weigh the risks of joining China's Belt and Road Initiative. Tai encouraged Brazil to assess the economic impact through risk management perspective, emphasizing the importance of economic resilience. And Chip, this Belt and Road Initiative here, alongside the BRICS aspirations, the two would need to work together, I feel like, in order to get either one of them done.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you, man. With you 100%. All right. All right.
Yes. Go ahead. Yep. Let's go.
You sure? Let's go ahead and do it.
Let's go ahead and do it.
Let's bring in Neville Spear, contributing editor at Drovers. Hey, Neville, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, Chip. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, my friend. Talk to me about carcass weights. What's the average?
Well, Thursday is carcass weight day. It's the actual slaughter numbers that we get from USDA. Last week, steer carcass weights were 950 pounds. We continue to just kind of add weight and do more with less. And, we get a lot of questions about how come this market hasn't run because we should be short on supply. That's the very reason. We just continue to add weight to these cattle and make them bigger. And that's a pretty remarkable landmark that we hit last week.
Well, yeah. And Neville, everybody needs to realize that's the average. That's not the heaviest of the carcass weights. That's the average.
Chip, that's exactly right. 950 pound average, right? So we know that there's a big top end to that. And there was a time when 950 pounds was the upper limit, and you used to get a discount for carcasses that big. It's really remarkable, right? But that's what cheap corn and tight numbers does. We figure out a way to continue to produce beef. It's an amazing story. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, it used to be those big carcasses like that. Like you said, they got the discount, and you heard all the you can't have the carcasses dragging on the floor off the hooks and all that. We got to rescale. Well, all the plants have been rescaled to handle these bigger carcasses, right?
That's exactly right. And then what they're telling you is, hey, keep bringing them that way because we need throughput. And so it's really also a very positive story about beef demand. Yeah. It's really
it's positive story about beef demand, beef genetics, and the ability of that animal to carry the weight. It's all a remarkable story, Neville. Well, I'm sure that we're going to talk more about it as time goes on. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Okay, Chip. Thank you.
All right. Get more on this story and a lot more that is happening in the beef industry from Neville Spear, contributing editor at Drovers. At www.drovers.com. All right, coming up next, we're talking corn breeding with Dr. Rex Bernardo from the University of Minnesota. Next.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Bex. Bex Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at BexHybrids.com.
Welcome back to AgriTalk, and it is time to hit the road again on the Farm Journal College Roadshow. Big thank you to Bex for making the Roadshow possible again this year, and don't forget, you'll get full Roadshow coverage from the University of Minnesota this weekend on U.S. Farm Report with Tyne Morgan. Let's talk about some of the really cool things that are happening at the University of Minnesota with Dr. Rex Bernardo. Dr. Bernardo is a professor and endowed chair in corn breeding and genetics for the Golden Gophers, and he joins us right now. Rex, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. I hope you are fine too, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Glad that you are here. Hey, before we talk specifically about corn breeding, talk to me about the agronomy department there at the University of Minnesota, and what should young people that are taking agronomy there expect when they get started?
Well, agriculture, as we all know, is an exciting field to be in. It's an exciting field to study today. And sometimes I wish I were young again so I could be a student again, but that's wishful thinking, of course, because there's a lot of things that a young person can learn by coming to the University of Minnesota and coming to our Department of Agronomy and Plant Genetics. We do research on plant breeding, how to improve crops, to feed the world and sustain the world. We are into agroecology, we're into crop production, cropping systems. We use a lot of technologies in the work that we have today, technologies that were not around when I first started my career. So I think it's a very exciting time for young and enthusiastic students to study agriculture. And I hope that young students come and give us, check us out and see what the opportunities are.
Yeah, okay. One of the themes that has been running through the college roadshow conversations that we have been having this fall is that the young people that are coming in and just getting started in their post high school education, is that the way that they expect to be educated is a little different than what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Are you experiencing that?
Yes, I think so. I think we're seeing again just the field changing, the generations changing. We have a lot of young students, for example, who are very social media savvy,
Yeah.
internet technology savvy. And hey, when I was a student, guess what? I went to lectures and took notes. And that's perhaps not the mode now. There's a lot more interaction that takes place inside the classroom, a lot more hands-on kinds of activities. And there's a lot more things that one can study. For example, I teach a course on coffee. It's been really well received, and this coffee course has been a wonderful opportunity to introduce students to food and agriculture and supply chain and climate change and all sorts of things. So yes, compared to just 5, 10 years ago, there has been a lot of changes for the positive, I think, in the education and learning that we have at the university.
There, you just said it, for the positive. It sounds to me like you enjoy this. You're embracing this and running with it.
Yes, that is correct. I'm running with it, and there's this quote that I like that says, "In times of change, the learners inherit the earth, but the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists." So I think we all need to be learners, and because we'll be experts in a world that no longer exists otherwise.
Wow. That's really, really good. I love it. I love it. Okay, well, let's talk about someone that was very much learned 100 years ago, and that is Henry Wallace. Is there anything left in corn breeding that Henry Wallace would be able to look at and say, yeah, that makes sense to me? Or is the traditional plant breeding almost a thing of the past?
Well, it's funny how our definition of traditional plant breeding changes over the years. Because there was a time, for example, when DNA fingerprints came to the fore, the technology became available, and we had this distinction of a traditional plant breeder and a modern plant breeder who uses DNA fingerprint technology. And now these DNA fingerprints are routinely used in corn breeding. That if you talk about a traditional plant breeder or a classical plant breeder, well, that is a person who now uses this technology. And in fact, it will be strange for one to not use it because of the help that it provides. But it's quite interesting. You mentioned Vice President Henry Wallace, and what a visionary, right? To see that hybrid corn is a thing. For me, it's kind of mind-boggling to imagine that there was a time when even hybrid corn was a new thing. And now, 100 years later, it's part of everyday farm life. And we're not used to a world with no hybrid corn. And so we see a lot of changes, and these changes, the useful things, they get incorporated in the way that we do things. And yes, at the end of the day, the objective is still to produce a corn hybrid that farmers can grow profitably and sustainably. And yet the ways that we now breed corn are quite different from the ways that corn was bred even just a few decades ago.
Right. Okay, so in modern breeding, what has you most excited? What techniques are holding the most promise to advance the effort the greatest?
Well, I don't think there's any one technique, and it really is a multiple different techniques that have come kind of one by one over the years. I fondly call them as power tools in plant breeding. Power tools, you could have just a hand hammer or saw, and you could do the job, but you can do the job more quickly and more efficiently and perhaps more uniform quality if you have an electric saw or an electric drill or something like, power tool like that. And I think it's the same way in corn breeding, that yes, basically we still cross one good parent by another good parent, and we hope we get progeny lines that perform well. But the tools that we have to identify what those good parents are have changed markedly over the years. So I mentioned DNA fingerprints. That is one tool that we now have. Corn breeders and breeders of other plant species now use drones to take photos and measurements of plants that we have, not just at any one point in the season, not just at one point in the season, but multiple time points in the season. A simple tool that we now have is the use of greenhouses year-round, or now we can ship our corn to Hawaii or Puerto Rico, so we can have multiple generations per year. And what that does is that it increases the genetic progress per unit time, so to speak, because instead of having only one generation, planting corn in April or May and harvesting it in the fall, now we can grow 3 or 4 generations a year. And so that speeds up the process. And so a lot of my work then deals with these different tools that we have. How do we all use them together so that the breeding process can be as effective and efficient as possible?
Okay. How predictable is corn breeding now? I mean, if you set out for a specific result, how likely are you to get that result?
Oh, that's a great question. I liken corn breeding now, and also soybean breeding for that matter. It's kind of like a factory process. So in a factory, we manufacture something, we have some raw material, it goes through a manufacturing process, it goes through quality control, and we release and market a good product in the end. And in a way, breeding has in many ways become like that it is a controlled, there's a process, there's a pipeline. But the non-predictability happens when you have pollen grain fertilizing an egg and you form a new individual. And of course, we cannot control what genes end up in that pollen and what genes end up in the egg. And so the genes in the individual, that we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. But there's some work right now that is being done to control a little bit of that process so that the outcomes would even be more predictable. What has happened too is there's now a lot of computer simulation of the entire process. So that entire breeding process, we can try to simulate that on a computer and try to see, well, what would the outcome be if I grow 50 progeny or 100 progeny or 200? Right. And so we can ask these what if kinds of questions to see what the outcomes might be.
I feel like we could talk forever, but we are out of time. Thank you so much for your time today, Professor Bernardo, and go Gophers this weekend against the Terps from Maryland, all right?
You bet.
All right, that is Dr. Rex Bernardo, professor and endowed chair in corn breeding and genetics at the University of Minnesota. It's amazing just how much progress and how many advancements we have witnessed in a relatively short period of time when it comes to plant breeding. Okay, RFK Jr., Make America Healthy Again. It has generated a multitude of reactions. We're going to get one from Dr. Kevin Folta next. Welcome to this installment of the Soy Checkoff Check-in. I'm AgriTalk host Chip Flory, and joining me on this week's check-in is Dawn Shire. Dawn is USB's Health and Nutrition Demand Work Group lead. Dawn grows soybeans and corn in Salem, South Dakota with her family. Dawn, welcome to the Soy Checkoff Check-in. How are you today?
Having a great day. Harvest is moving along really fast and having a great harvest. You know, a little bit on the year, we had the wettest June in record, and not the wet, one of the wettest. And then we get to September, we have one of the driest Septembers in record. So things moved really fast. Most people are all done with bean harvest. Guys are finishing corn harvest. You know, it's great when you're not fighting mud and cold. Harvest goes great.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay. Let's talk about the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics Food and Nutrition Conference and Expo. That's a long title. You were very recently there. Tell us what it is and why it's important for soybean farmers and the Soy Checkoff to engage in events like this.
Well, first I'm going to talk about a little bit. It's called FNCE. They shorten it called FNCE. The event brings together about 9,000 registered dietitians and healthcare professionals. So why we're there, bring it back to the vision of USB. And the vision is to partner to deliver sustainable soy solutions to every life, every day. With soy foods, you deliver a high-quality, complete plant protein with a variety of vitamins and minerals. So right there, I think the answer is why we're there. We're focusing at promoting health benefits of U.S. soy growing and highlighting the sustainability of U.S. soy farmers. While we're there, we're trying to clear up some of the misconceptions about soy. There's a lot out there, and I kind of look at it like a piece of paper. Once it's crinkled, it's hard to straighten up the misconceptions. Yeah. So we had a spotlight session there and addressed the nutrition of breast cancer and menopause. And it was really good to hear it. It affects people a lot. The other area we talk about is obesity, where soy can be a solution for obesity. Some areas might not have a problem with food security, but protein security, getting the right food. And soy can be an answer to that. So we should be in that market.
So through the Checkoff's health and nutrition priority areas, it's not just human health that we're talking about. It's also animal health and nutrition that we're talking about, right?
Yes. Animal agriculture is our number one customer. We work mostly with poultry, swine, and dairy. 97% of the meal that we produce, U.S. meal, is fed to chickens, turkeys, poultry, fish, and other livestock. Soy can maintain an important role in maintaining herd health. USB works with the Animal Nutrition Working Group, and through the research, one of the things they've pointed out is soy meal may provide antiviral and anti-inflammatory benefits. U.S. soy meal has strong economic values and efficient conversion rates. So with these conversion rates and the antiviral and everything, one of the main factors you're looking at is U.S. soy can help bring animal protein to market faster with fewer inputs. And with that means sustainability. These guys will have a better sustainability when they use U.S. soy.
Absolutely. And it is so important when we talk about the food security and putting a safe and healthy food product out there for consumers in the country. Dawn, thank you so much for your time. We sure appreciate you.
Thank you for everything.
You bet. All right. That is South Dakota Farmer and United Soybean Board Health and Nutrition Demand Work Group lead, Dawn Shire. Learn more about what Dawn does as a farmer leader for USB and the projects she is working on at unitedsoybean.org. I'm Chip Flory. Now, let's get back to AgriTalk.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. Knowledge is power. We're here to charge your batteries. AgriTalk.
Man, I am looking forward to this conversation. It's been a while since we've talked with Dr. Kevin Folta, horticulture professor at the University of Florida. He joins us right now. Kevin, it's great to talk to you again. What's been keeping you busy?
Everything. Nice to talk to you too, Chip. I had a kid. You got another one coming, and everything's going great there. She's growing up to be a really good little farm girl. It's pretty cool.
Nice. Okay. This short video by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about his plans to make America healthy again, him standing out in front of the USDA building in D.C., it's come up in a lot of conversations on AgriTalk, in the free-for-all and the Farmer Forum. Talked with Senator Grassley yesterday. It came up in that conversation, and it got me wondering what you were thinking about it. And man, I'm glad I reached out to you. So I'm the question that I asked you yesterday, and and that's going to start us off here in the conversation, is what do you make of RFK Jr.'s role in this election and his Make America Healthy Again effort? So what do you make of it?
Well, I think it's great to make America healthy. I mean, I think we can make better dietary choices. I think that's great. The problem is that folks like RFK Jr., he's an attorney who's made his fortune suing environmental companies, or suing companies he's an environmental lawyer who's made his fortune suing companies, and usually about agricultural chemistry, other things like this. So while he's wrapping himself in the facade of we're here to make you healthy, he's not a scientist. He's not an expert in health. And the ways that he is planning to do it will be deleterious to American agriculture.
Yeah. He is very outspoken about glyphosate. And I got to imagine that if he had an active role in the Trump administration, he'd be taking aim at that tool, wouldn't he?
Oh, absolutely. That's first thing on his list. And the problem there is that there is such a popular press sentiment against glyphosate that those of us in agriculture and science know is perfectly fine. Glyphosate is a once-in-a-century chemical that, if used properly, shows no signs of harm. Yet, RFKJ was on Rogan a few months ago, and for 20 minutes spoke about the dangers of glyphosate, which I've refuted point by point on the Talking Biotech podcast. But everything he says is incorrect, and he doesn't know what he's talking about, yet he's finding incredible traction inside politics. How that would wash against, and the problem that I see is that when you start seeing senators who would be reliably working for agriculture, like Senator Ron Johnson or Representative Grassley, you start seeing a shift towards influence on the folks who should be defending agriculture now are starting to actually fall into RFK Jr.'s teachings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the it's absolutely amazing to me how is it easy? How easy some of the public is duped into believing that glyphosate is, a poison, and they have no understanding of how the technology has actually lowered chemical use in agriculture. I mean, I'm not off base on this, am I?
No, you're right on that. The use of glyphosate and BT traded corn has decreased the amount of insecticide and changed herbicides to ones that are more environmentally sustainable, which is glyphosate glufosinate. And so when you switch to the better herbicides, you're actually making less environmental impact. Yet these are tools which, because of attorneys who are making a fortune on lawsuits, targeted the big company that would be easily taken out because of a reputation and a public name, the Monsanto thing that is dragging along with this. That has been really a problem because it's very easy to sway a jury of 12 when you've got a sick person with cancer into saying this big bad company did it. And so It's an unfair fight, and they're not teaching right science.
Right. All right. We're talking with Dr. Kevin Folta from University of Florida and the Talking Biotech podcast. Next on the list is going to be the genetically enhanced crops across the board, right? That is not an acceptable agricultural practice for RFK, is it?
Well, let me just step one back there. If you can get rid of glyphosate, you can get rid of anything. And so if you lose glyphosate, you'll lose fungicides, you'll lose what's left of pesticide or insecticides. Which the Trump administration was actually very good in helping to protect things like chlorpyrifos for its specific applications, where in some places it's all we have left. For fruit tree growers, peach borers, persimmons trees, lorsban and chlorpyrifos is the last thing you have, and now that's gone. But so if you can get rid of glyphosate, everything's on the table. And then genetically engineered crops. It'll be the next one to go because the arguments are just as irrational against them and found on just as little data. Yet this is something else that he feels has to go.
Right. But Kevin, the problem is this is all wrapped up in this Make America Healthy Again effort. And how can you or me, you or I, stand in front of a group and say, doggone it, this Make America Healthy Again effort is wrong? How can we do that?
Yeah. And that's the tough part here, right? They've wrapped themselves in this narrative that says we're going to make America healthy again by getting rid of chemistry that's used on farms. And when 1% of your country is agriculturally aligned and understands what the stuff is and isn't, we don't stand a chance. And even if we start making noise, I get out and talk about it constantly. I'm talking about it tomorrow at Las Vegas at a big conference about the disinformation that comes from politically motivated, or in this case, it's not really political motivation. It's this strange anti-ag sentiment.
Right.
How do we stand a chance to correct that?
Right. And the thing is, we've got some examples of the dangers associated with this. Tell us about what's happening in Colorado.
Well, Colorado is a great example. That back when in the mid 2000s, they had some county land that was being used for agriculture. It was substantial acreage, and it was all being used for sugar beets and corn, all genetically engineered, and use of glyphosate and other BT traded corn. And this was great. It was irrigated because it's in kind of a desert area, but it was working great for the county of Boulder and their historical farmers, and generations had used that space. Well, a group of folks in Boulder themselves said, well, we want this for organic agriculture. We want to convert it and ban glyphosate and ban the G crops. And the farmers there started an organization called FAIR, where they were very wonderful about connecting in a very constructive way with locals. They brought me on board. We talked about how to do it. And they were able to retain most of that space. Some of it was converted by the county in a 2-to-1 vote for organic agriculture, and since has cost millions to find people to work there, to find ways to protect the crops, to come up with strategies to enhance the soil. There has been so much that has gone backwards because of this politically motivated campaign.
Yeah. Yep. Kevin, are there any parallels to draw with Vandana Shiva on this, or is that a stretch?
Not at all. Her efforts in Sri Lanka got modern chemistries banned out of Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka used glyphosate as an herbicide in tea plantations, a very weedy place, but they were able to use this as a way to mitigate weed stress on their tea exports. And eventually these are not genetically engineered tea plants, they're just using it as an herbicide on regular farms. And because of the loss of the herbicides and synthetic fertilizers, and some other unfortunate things that happened in the country at the same time, they had an economic crash. And Vandana Shiva walks away, scot-free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sri Lanka, and the thing is, Davis will remember this because there was a time where we talked about, just kind of offhandedly talked about, geez, look what's happening in Sri Lanka. But it was food shortages and, as you said, an economic collapse in that country because of the efforts of Shiva, right?
Yeah, You can find her seminars on YouTube saying we're going to convert Sri Lanka to organic agriculture, and they did it overnight. And the farmers weren't ready for it. And the crops couldn't handle it. And there was widespread famine. There was economic collapse. People went hungry because somebody who doesn't know food and farming was making policy decisions about food and farming. And RFK Jr. is our Vandana Shiva.
Oh my gosh. And you know what else you can find through a pretty simple Google search, Kevin, is you can find RFK Jr.'s support for the teachings of Vandana Shiva.
Yep.
And
yes.
And, so I want to go. We've only got 30 seconds, but your first reaction in the note that you responded yesterday was, "This is scary." And
yeah,
I think we should all be scared of this.
It is extremely scary because he's influenced the influencers. He's influenced the politicians into buying into his snake oil. And that's exactly what happened in Sri Lanka. I never thought that I would see American politicians being willing to underbust the farmers. So the ag nation here has to get really loud really quick.
Amazing. Amazing. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your thoughts on this. Keep fighting the good fight, man.
You bet, Chip. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Kevin Folta, horticulture professor at the University of Florida, the Talking Biotech podcast, and a thinker, defender of modern agriculture right there.
AgriTalk is brought to you by Bex. Bex Hybrids is with you every turn because both on and off the field, we're all farmers at heart. See why at BexHybrids.com.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip Flory. Glad that you're with us. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Kevin Folta. At least give you something to think about as you think about the issues that are surrounding this election. Pretty amazing stuff. Okay. Another pretty amazing stuff is the dietary guidelines that come out from USDA on a fairly regular basis. They're updated from time to time. And there is a dietary guidelines advisory committee out there that's considering some new recommendations. I want to talk about it right now with Dr. Shalene McNeill. Shalene is the National Cattlemen's Beef Association Director of Nutrition Science. Dr. McNeill, welcome to AgriTalk. How are you?
I'm great. Hey, thanks for having me today.
Okay. So did they release recommendations or have a meeting to preview those recommendations? What is it?
That's what they did. They had a meeting to preview the recommendations, and now they're going to start putting those recommendations into their written report, and we'll see that sometime before December the 9th.
Okay. What have we learned about these recommendations?
Well, one of the things that we've seen is that they are actually recommending reducing red meat even further than it is already. And what we know is that we've had 4 decades of dietary guidance. We've cut back on red meat intake because of those dietary guidelines, and we have higher rates of obesity and higher rates of chronic disease than we've ever had before. So it just doesn't make any sense to restrict red meat in the diet anymore. We need the nutrients in red meat to help close important nutrient gaps.
Okay, so how did they arrive at these recommendations? I mean, what input did they consider?
You know, they say they looked at the evidence, but what we've seen now in looking at the work that they are doing, and at least at what's available to us, is that they've done an incomplete review of the evidence. They rely on weaker forms of science. We know it as correlation evidence, not causation. They lump red and processed meats together. They look at unhealthy diets with red meats. They don't think about protein quality. Just this week, we had another study come out that shows by University of Arkansas Medical Sciences researchers that ground beef packs a much bigger muscle building punch than soy-based alternatives. So we know that plant and animal proteins aren't created equal. It makes no sense to recommend that beans replace meat in the diet.
this makes me crazy. I mean, there was a time that it was all, everything that you read or saw was that eggs are bad, don't eat too much. Now, eggs are good. Butter bad, now butter's good. It feels to me like the evidence has stacked up so aggressively on the side of animal protein that I don't know why red meat would be any different than the experience that we've had with eggs and butter.
Well, I would agree with you that the evidence to support beef in the diet, to support animal proteins in the diet has gotten stronger over time. I agree with you. We've got many more reasons to appreciate the benefits of eating animal source proteins. And we've also seen that past dietary guidelines have had to change their advice because they've rushed to conclusions. So I think that's something to be cautious about. It is frustrating for me as a registered dietitian, but also as a mom, it's frustrating because I look at the things that we can really do to be practical. There's a lot of ways that you can eat a healthy diet that has plenty of red meat and still enjoy all these other food groups, get all your fruits and vegetables. It'll be an enjoyable diet. You'll help manage your weight. You'll lower your cholesterol. You'll improve your blood pressure. So it's not necessary for us to change up the diet significantly or go to these extremes. We certainly don't need to be substituting beans, peas, and lentils in place of beef in the diet.
Yeah, boy. Okay, so if your input was going to be taken seriously by the committee, what would you add to the list, or how would you change this list of recommendations? And the other thing is, how concerned do we need to be about this list of recommendations? Is it going to be in the dietary guidelines from USDA?
Well, we need to stop telling the public just to eat a plant-based diet. We know that most of the calories in the American diet, those calories that have contributed to our obesity and our chronic disease, most of those are coming from plant-based foods. We need to maintain the amount of animal source foods. We only eat about 1.5 ounces of beef a day. We need to keep that beef in our diet because that's what's helping us close the nutrient gaps like iron and zinc and B vitamins. That's where we're getting a lot of our high quality protein. So we need to maintain at least the servings of beef that we have, or red meat that we have in the dietary guidelines. And I think as we look to future guidelines, we need to continue to refocus on nutrient dense diets. I mean, beef is one of the most nutrient dense foods. Red meats are nutrient dense. And Americans need to get the most nutrition for their calories. A lot of us need fewer calories than we're eating. That's why we're getting more overweight. And we need to rely on these power-packed foods like beef to help us get there.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that this is, I need to ask again. How concerned do we need to be about, does the cattle industry need to be about this list of potential recommendations? Is it going to make its way into USDA's final guidelines?
Well, I think we need to be very concerned, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about it. It's not just the cattle industry, but from a public health perspective, as a registered dietitian, we need to be concerned because we can look around and see how hard it is, how many people are struggling with eating a healthy diet. We know that cutting back on beef over the years hasn't been productive for us. And I think for anybody in the public space to be paying attention, I think we're all looking for easier ways to eat healthier.
Yeah, we are. And it's still up to the consumer to make their own food choices. But these guidelines influence things like the school lunch program, right?
They do. They influence all federal nutrition policies, what's going on in school lunch, what health professionals think. And that's why we don't want to see these previewed recommendations become solid in the report. And I think producers can weigh in. We have ways for them to do that. And the public should be paying attention to this because we all need to help each other with how we're going to get to this healthier diet that a lot of us are striving to do.
All right. Excellent. Keep us up to speed on this, Dr. McNeill. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Dr. Shalene McNeill, National Cattlemen's Beef Association Director of Nutrition Science. Thanks for listening this morning. Come back this afternoon. We got Pete Meyer, Muddy Boots Ag, here on AgriTalk.